All right, get ready to dive deep, everybody, because today we're going to be tackling the future of AI. And we're not just talking about AI, getting a little bit better at writing poems or anything like that. We're talking about a huge shift. Like AI is graduating kind of from thinking fast to thinking slow, if you can believe that.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. It
Yeah.
really is fascinating how we're moving past that stage of, AI just writing us catchy jingles and things like that. This is about something much, much bigger. It's about AI starting to develop the capacity to reason, kind of like we humans do, to actually pause and really ponder before it gives you an answer.
It's true. And we've got reports here from, top venture capitalists, folks like Sequoia and Better Capital, alongside some, really in-depth analyses from some AI experts, even some hardcore developer explanations, if you can believe it. And
Indeed.
you know what? They all seem to agree AI is really on the verge of transforming, well, pretty much everything, not just by, getting better at what it can already do, but by tackling things that, frankly, I think a lot of us thought were impossible.
Yeah, and for our listeners out there, think about a world where AI doesn't just, let's say, help you with your work, but it actually does the work itself. I mean, that's the kind of potential we're really talking about here.
Okay, so let's try to unpack that a bit. Sequoia Capital, they point out what they call a kind of a crucial shift that's happening right now from like the foundation of AI, where the big players like OpenAI and Google, they're duking it out. But now there's this whole new level emerging, and they're calling it the reasoning
The
layer.
reasoning layer, it really makes you wonder what that actually means for, well, everything, right? I mean, up until now, AI has been pretty incredible at, spotting patterns, processing tons of data,
Hmm.
and then giving us responses based on what it's been trained on. But it wasn't really truly reasoning, was it?
Right, it was more like a, I don't know, like a supercharged autocomplete, like on your phone. But hold on, because things, they are changing, and apparently pretty rapidly. OpenAI, they've got this new model, O1, they're calling it. It's also got this nickname, Strawberry, apparently. And from what I'm hearing, this thing is a total game changer. They're saying it's really the first to demonstrate, like, real general reasoning skills.
Yeah, it all comes down to this thing. They're calling it inference-time compute. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, I have. It's basically, instead of just spitting out, the first response that finds, these new AIs can take a little extra time, to actually think through a problem, maybe even, weigh the options a little bit and then try to, I don't know, choose the best solution.
It's like instead of just mimicking, the AI is actually becoming more of a strategic thinker.
It's becoming more human. It's kind of freaky, but also really cool. This whole thing, it kind of reminds me of AlphaGo, that AI that actually beat the world champion Go player a few years back.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. AlphaGo is like the perfect example here, right? It didn't just memorize a bunch of moves. It actually sat there and simulated future scenarios. And from those simulations, it picked the path that was most likely to lead to victory. I mean, that's inference-time compute in action.
Yeah.
And now picture that same kind of power being applied to, well, I don't know, language models or to like coding,
Yeah.
even just solving really complicated problems in, really any field.
It's true. This is where it gets really interesting because one of these analyses that we've got here, it's called Counting the OAMs, and it actually claims that this whole thinking slow thing, it's actually changing how we even think about measuring how AI is progressing. It's
Yeah.
not just about like, how big the model is anymore, but it's how much of this inference time compute that it's actually packing.
Oh, that's fascinating. So it's not just about the size of the brain, it's about how much time it has to think.
Exactly. And they were talking about these things called like inference clouds, which I thought was a fascinating idea.
What is that?
Well, they're describing them as like, these vast networks of computing power that are really dedicated to letting AI think for, not just minutes or hours, but potentially like days, even longer. And it really makes you wonder, what could AI achieve if it could, I don't know if think is the right word, but if it could process for like decades on a single problem.
It's kind of mind-boggling when you really start to think about it.
It really
It
is.
is.
But let's bring this back down to earth for a second because, we could go on and on about this. But what does all this actually mean for us? For our jobs, for our like everyday lives? That's what I'm really kind of curious about.
Yeah, no, that's the question, right?
Yeah.
And that's where things get really practical. And Sequoia actually, they highlight this, I thought, really critical insight. AI isn't just like coming for software. It's coming for services. They're talking about AI targeting those trillions and trillions of dollars in the service economy.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. And they were talking about this new business model too, weren't they? Something about outcome as a service or something like
Yeah,
that.
outcome as a service, OaaS, they're calling it.
Catchy.
It really is. And basically what it means is you're no longer paying for the tool itself, you're paying for the actual result that that tool can produce. It's almost like hiring an AI employee, and that employee just gets the job done. It's wild.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I could use a couple of those.
So me too. Especially if they can handle those really annoying tasks. But one of our other sources, Better Capital, they put it, I thought, perfectly. They said, humans, we did the work, then we used software to do the work, then sauce came along, and now AI is just going to do the work. And you know what? They're already investing in tons of companies that are doing just that.
Really?
Oh, yeah. They highlighted a couple in here. DPD Zero, for example. They use AI to actually prevent loan defaults. Then there's Mazink. They're leveraging AI to actually deliver guaranteed results for influencer marketing campaigns. No more guesswork. It just works.
Wow, that would make a lot of people happy.
Oh, for sure. And then there's AutoDraft. They use AI to create really high-quality animations, but they're doing it at like a fraction of the usual cost.
Yeah.
So these are all about outcomes, not tools. I think that's the key thing to remember here.
Outcomes over everything. And it's not just in, these niche markets either. Sequoia was talking about this other company, Sierra, and they're offering an AI customer service agent. And listen to this. It gets paid per issue resolved. That's it. No hourly rate or anything like that.
Wow, that's really interesting.
I thought so. And then there's this other one, XBOW.
XBOW?
Yeah, they're calling it an AI pen tester. It basically automates a lot of these really complicated cybersecurity tasks, stuff that until now you would have had to hire, really expensive specialists to do.
XBOW, that's actually a really good example of how AI can really kind of blow these markets wide open. Because you think about it, if they can automate a lot of that pen testing work, suddenly they can make it accessible to businesses of, all different sizes. And that could potentially lead to like a massive, massive surge in demand for these kinds of services.
Yeah, and that actually brings up, I think, a really important point about the impact of all of this on jobs.
The future of work. It's definitely going to look different. I don't think anybody's denying that anymore. And I think one of the big questions is, is AI going to come for everybody's jobs?
Right. Is it Terminator time?
Yeah, exactly. But really, if you look at it, it's probably not going to be about AI taking all the jobs. It's going to be about AI changing the types of jobs that humans are doing.
Yeah.
And I think one of the key skills for pretty much everyone moving forward is going to be adaptability. And honestly, just learning how to work alongside these AI agents because they're going to be everywhere.
Yeah. Sequoia actually even questioned whether our traditional software companies, can they even survive this kind of shift?
Oh, interesting.
Right. They drew this comparison to the move from on-premise software to SaaS, back in the day. And they pointed out that a lot of those older companies, they just couldn't adapt, so they went extinct.
Ouch. Yeah, that's a good point.
So could history be repeating itself? And if so, who's going to be left standing?
Yeah, in reading through all this, there was this one company that really caught my eye. Have you heard of Day.ai?
Day.ai, no. What are they all about?
So they're offering like an AI-powered CRM. But what's cool is it completely customizes itself to your specific business.
Mm-hmm.
And it does all that just by, get this, analyzing your emails and your calendar.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's almost like having like a personal AI assistant, but for like managing all your customer relationships for you.
That's wild. So, okay, we've thrown a lot at our listeners here, but if you had to kind of sum it all up, what does all this mean for the average person listening to us right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think first and foremost, understanding this shift is absolutely crucial. I can't emphasize that enough. And honestly, I think this is true no matter what field you're in, because AI really is about to touch everything we do. But here's the thing. It's not all doom and gloom. It also means that there are incredible opportunities on the horizon if you know where to look.
Yeah, that's the exciting part, right? It's like this whole new world opening up.
Exactly. And, if AI can already do all this incredibly complex stuff, like we've been talking about, things like, cybersecurity or coding, even managing clients, what other human jobs, might we be surprised to see, maybe not replaced, but kind of augmented or even automated in the coming years?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that, but it's certainly something to think about, right?
It is. It's true. It really does feel like the possibilities are like almost endless at this point.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes you wonder, where do we sit in a world where AI can, seemingly do it all?
Age-old question, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think before we go too far down that rabbit hole, let's keep in mind that even with all this power, these AIs, they're still tools at the end of the day.
Tools that we're, hopefully smart enough to use wisely.
Exactly. And to shape and to direct.
Yeah.
We're not just along for the ride, at least not yet.
Not yet. Although, counting the ohms, that analysis we were talking about, they seem to think things are moving pretty darn fast.
How fast are we talking here?
Well, they actually suggest that we could see another, huge leap in AI capability, on par with the jump from, GPT-2 to GPT-4. And remember, that was only a few years ago. They think that could happen by, 2027.
Wow, that's right around the corner practically.
Yeah, and think about it. GPT-2, that thing was barely, forming coherent sentences, and now GPT-4 is, acing college exams, writing code like a pro. It really makes your head spin.
It really does. That kind of progress, in just a handful of years, it's almost unbelievable. And, counting the O's, they actually use this measure, they call it effective compute.
Effective compute.
Yeah, and basically it combines raw computing power with any kind of algorithmic improvements that are happening.
Right, so it's not just about the hardware anymore, it's how we're actually using it.
Exactly. And based on what they're seeing, they're basically arguing that, we're on this fast track.
To what some people are calling artificial general intelligence, AGI.
AGI, there it is. The holy grail of AI, right? And machines that can truly think like us across any field, any domain. I mean, it's an idea that's been debated, for decades? Some people saying, it's going to be a utopia. Others saying it's going to be, the end of times as we know it.
Yeah, we've all seen the movies, right? Exactly. But here's the thing. Even if we don't want to, get ahead of ourselves too much, and I know we've been kind of, geeking out a little bit about all this.
Yeah, just a tad.
But the evidence from all these sources, it really does make you wonder, is AGI closer than we think?
It really does.
Mm-hmm.
Because, just a few years ago, if you told somebody that AI could write code like a professional programmer, or, solve these incredibly complex math problems, they would have laughed you out of the room.
Right. They would have said, oh, yeah, that's 20, 30 years away at least.
At least.
Yeah.
But here we are.
Here we are. So, okay, let's just say, for argument's sake, that AGI does arrive in the next few years.
Let's say it does.
Then what? Are we all out of a job? Are we living in, some kind of, sci-fi movie where, the machines are calling the shots?
Well, I certainly hope not. And I think, the thing to remember here is that AI, it's a tool. And just like any tool, it can be used for good or for, not so good purposes.
Right. It's all about how we wield it.
Exactly. So I think the real challenge here, and honestly, the really exciting opportunity, is figuring out how we can best use it.
Right. How do we harness this power responsibly?
Exactly. We need to be thinking now about the ethical implications of all of this, you know, about how we can make sure that these tools, as powerful as they are, actually benefit humanity. They don't replace it.
I love that. I love that perspective because it's not about, AI versus humans. It's about AI and humans working together.
Exactly. It's about this partnership, this collaboration.
But for that to really work, I think we, the humans, need to be informed. We need to be proactive. We can't just sit back and kind of, let the technology steamroll us.
I completely agree. And honestly, that's what this whole deep dive is really all about, right? It's about giving you, the listener, the knowledge you need to kind of navigate this really crazy, ever-changing landscape. It's about understanding AI's potential, but also being honest about the risks and really thinking about the choices that we have to make.
Right, because the choices are ours to make, at least for now. And one of the, I think, biggest choices that we're all going to have to grapple with is how we adapt to this, new world of work.
Right, because the old playbook might not cut it anymore.
Exactly. So if AI can do so many of these tasks that we're doing now, what new skills are we going to need? What new roles are going to emerge? What will even be left for us?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's something that, businesses, educators, even governments are really starting to wrap their heads around. Because there's this growing realization that, we need to prepare for a future where AI is not just some tool that's off to the side. It's part of the team.
It's like our new coworker, whether we like it or not.
Right, exactly. And, some of the sources that we were looking at, they were talking about this idea of cognitive architectures.
Cognitive architecture.
Yeah, so basically it's the way that an AI system actually thinks and tackles problems, if that makes sense.
So it's not just about raw intelligence, but is how that intelligence is actually structured and applied.
Exactly. It's You can have a really, really powerful engine, but if you don't have the right transmission, you're not going to go anywhere.
That's a great analogy. I'm stealing that.
Go for it. But, Sequoia, they were talking about this company, Factory, and what they do is they actually create AI droids.
Droids, like in Star Wars.
Yeah, well, kind of. But these droids, they're designed to mimic how humans think, but in very specific jobs.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just like, a general AI. It's like, AI that's specifically built to be like, a software engineer or a customer service rep.
Exactly. Or like, a financial analyst, whatever you need.
Specialized AI brains for every task. I love it.
It's kind of crazy, right? And these droids, they're not just working in isolation either. They're often part of these like multi-agent systems.
Multi-agent systems. So they're like collaborating with other AIs.
Exactly. And of course, with us humans, we're all in this together, supposedly.
Right. It's a team effort, or so they say. But I think that's an important point, right? Because we're not just talking about like replacing individual workers anymore. It's about like fundamentally reimagining how we work, how we do business, how we function as a society.
Yeah, because think about it. Teams of AI agents working 24/7, they don't take breaks. They don't need vacations.
Right. No more HR complaints.
Exactly. I mean, that's like next level efficiency.
It is. It's kind of amazing. And with this whole, outcome as a service thing taking off.
OaaS. It's got a ring to it, doesn't it?
It does. But yeah, businesses are no longer like selling software. They're selling results.
That's the name of the game now. Outcomes over everything.
So instead of, buying a CRM system, you might pay an AI to like actually manage your customer relationships for you.
Yep. And guarantee those results that you're looking for. Or instead of buying like accounting software, an AI just handles your books. It makes sure you're compliant with all the regulations. You don't even have to think about it.
It's like having a super powered, personal assistant for everything.
I know. It's a fundamental shift though, isn't
Yeah.
it? Like in how we even think about like value and work.
Absolutely.
And it's happening faster than I think a lot of people realize.
It really is. It's like, hold on a second. I need to catch my breath. But, I was thinking about this earlier.
Yeah, what's that?
While figuring out how to actually integrate these like, new AI solutions into like our existing workflows, that might slow things down a bit initially, right?
Sure. There's always going to be some friction there.
But the promise of a true like drop-in remote worker AI.
Drop-in remote worker. That's a great way to put it.
I mean, that's too big to ignore, right? Imagine AI that can like actually act like a coworker.
Oh.
Like attending meetings, collaborating on projects, maybe even like taking on entire tasks and just like running with them.
That would be amazing.
It would be a game changer, wouldn't it?
You really would.
Yeah.
But, it also kind of begs the question, what about us? What's our role in all of this?
Right. Are we just like the managers of the AI overlords now?
Okay, exactly.
Right.
Are we managing these teams? Are we collaborating with them? Or are we, eventually going to be competing with them? These are questions, honestly, that I think we need to be addressing like now before the technology kind of gets ahead of us and makes those decisions for us.
Yeah. It's funny you should say that because I was actually reading that Generative AI's Act 2 article earlier.
Oh, yeah. Why should
It was really interesting, but there was this one idea that really stuck with me. They were talking about this idea of Generative AI's Move 37. And they were referring to that, famous move that AlphaGo made that stunned, like even the Go masters, right?
Right. I remember that.
And it made me think, it's like that moment when an AI does something so unexpected, so brilliant, that it almost feels like, true independent thought.
Right, like a real aha.
Moment. Not that the AI is sentient or conscious or anything like that, but it's like, wow, this thing is capable of, thinking in ways that we as humans can't even really fathom.
It's both thrilling and, a little bit terrifying at the same time.
Absolutely. It's a glimpse into like the raw potential here. And it's also a reminder that, we're really only scratching the surface of what these machines might be capable of.
We're just getting started. But I think it might be time to, start to wrap things up here. Unless you have any other burning thoughts.
No, I think you've covered it all. But I do have a thought for everybody listening, if you're still with us. If AI can already do all of this stuff that we've been talking about, right? All this incredibly complex stuff, cybersecurity, coding, even managing clients. What other human jobs might we be surprised to see? Maybe not completely replaced, but at least, automated or augmented in the next few years.
Right. What seemingly irreplaceable skill or expertise, might suddenly be on the chopping block. It's a question worth pondering, that's for sure.
Because it could have a pretty profound impact on all of our futures. It really makes you realize, like, the future isn't some distant thing, you know? It's already happening. It's just, like they say, it's not evenly distributed yet, you know?
Exactly. Some folks are out there living in, like, 2030, while the rest of us are still catching up.
I know, right?
Mhm.
And some of these AI capabilities we've been talking about, I mean, they seem like something out of, like, Star Trek, you know?
Totally.
But they're already being used by businesses, like, right now.
And that uneven distribution we're seeing, I think it's about to become like a tidal wave, as this technology just keeps evolving at this crazy pace.
Yeah.
And the early adopters, the ones who are really like embracing these tools, these new business models, they're the ones who are going to have that like serious edge moving forward.
So if you're out there listening to this and you're, a business leader, an entrepreneur, heck, even just someone who wants to stay ahead of the curve, this is it. This is your wake-up call. You really got to be thinking about, what are the outcome as a service plays in your world?
What can you outsource? What can you hand off?
Exactly. What tasks, what processes can you at least start to imagine, being handed off to AI? Or at the very least, like, augmented by AI in some way.
Because the possibilities really are pretty much endless at this point.
They really are. But here's the big question, and I think this is like the million-dollar question for a lot of folks. How do you actually use all these crazy new tools, not just to like chase the latest trends, but to really create value, to solve real-world problems, to actually make things better?
It's not about adopting technology for technology's sake. It's about using it intentionally. It's about using AI as a tool to make a real difference in the world.
I love that. And that brings us right back to us, right? Like the humans in the equation.
We can't forget about us.
I know, but I think one of those articles, the one about cognitive architectures, it really drove home this point. That we need to be really thoughtful about how we design these AI systems, right? They need to work in harmony with us, not just replace us,
We don't want to engineer ourselves out of existence.
Exactly. It's about building these systems that enhance what we're already good at, that help us accomplish, more than we ever could alone.
It's like, imagine if you could offload all those like tedious, repetitive tasks that you do every single day to an AI. Suddenly you've got all this free time and mental energy to focus on the things that really light you up.
The things that require creativity, strategy, all those uniquely human skills.
Exactly. It's about like leaning into our strengths, focusing on what makes us human.
And ultimately, I think creating a future where, humans and AI, they're not at odds. They're working side by side to build something, hopefully better than what we have now.
Now, that's a future I'm excited about.
Me too. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you all with one last thought. The future of AI, it's not set in stone, right? It's not this predetermined thing. The choices that we make today, the investments we make, even just the conversations that we're having right now, they're all shaping that future.
That's the thing about the future. It's not something that just happens to us. It's something that we actively create.
I love that.
And by really understanding AI's potential, by being honest about the implications, but also, using it responsibly, I really believe we have the chance to create something truly remarkable.
I agree. So to everyone listening, keep learning, keep asking those tough questions, and most importantly, keep the conversation going, because the future of AI and, frankly, our future depends on it. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll catch you next time.